Hello everybody, it's Precious Pioneer and welcome back to my YouTube channel, the channel where we talk about food and lifestyle and different motivational things. And today I kind of wanted to go over why it's important to figure out who you are and what that all means. I think that we're always constantly told to be ourselves and stay true to yourself and be firm in what you believe and all these different things. But what if you don't know who that is, or what if you don't know who you are and you're struggling with that? I feel like it could be a little bit more challenging on that end. Figuring out who you are is kind of a lifelong journey, and even when you start to grasp it, you grow and you change and evolve, and so you can never quite pinpoint exactly who you are at every given moment. And so that is why it can be really challenging for people and individuals to kind of start to figure that out. But I think the fact that we do change as often as we do is the beauty in life as a whole. And so if you're struggling with any of that and you're struggling to figure out your own identity and what it means to be who you are and why it matters so much, I think the first step would be to figure out your core values and your beliefs. You can start off with simple I am beliefs, whether it be I am smart, I am kind, I am adventurous, or it can be on a very tangible level of like what you actually do. So I am a writer, I am a poet, I am a runner. You can start to identify yourself in that category as well. So it could also be helpful to compare yourself to your favorite heroes or who you consider to be role models and start to question why those people are your role models. For me, I would say my role models are like Michelle Obama. I really like Oprah. I really like Chef Gordon Ramsay. I also like Chef Samin Nosrat. I like Chef Dan Barber. I like all of these people. When I think about it, I admire their work ethic. I admire their honesty. I admire their sense of humor and their grit to follow their dreams and to use their skill sets to help other people. Oh, looks like someone's alarm went off. And so those are the core values that I truly believe in, and I believe in their kindness and their heart and their aspiration to feed people or their passion to help people in general. And so that's what I take away from them, and I think that's kind of the similar beliefs that I have within myself. And so consider who your heroes are or who you admire, and you can kind of tie those attributes to yourself. When identifying your core beliefs, you either came to be through nature versus nurture. That's like basic psychology of nature. You're shaped by the environment around you. So whether you grew up in an incredibly rich and pompous neighborhood versus like you grew up in a poor area, your environment can definitely play a role. And then versus nurture, like the people you're around, whether you had a really good upbringing with family and friends, or if you were alone, or if you were adopted, or if you had a really good experience or a negative experience, could really influence how that shaped you growing up. And so figuring out those key elements could really help you to identify pieces of who you are. But I think sometimes facing those things can be challenging because you have to go a long way kind of picking away the pieces to figure out where those elements come from and where these certain character traits come from, whether that could be a sense of anger or resentment, or a sense of disbelief, or a sense of lack of caring or gratitude, or whatever it may be. Sometimes those elements can definitely stem from those pieces in your childhood or how you grew up. And I think the beautiful thing about that element is that we are constantly changing, but if you aren't able to identify those things, it matters because you aren't able to change it if you can't identify it. Going into number 2 is just to allow yourself to grow and to change over time. I think the amazing thing about life is that you can reinvent yourself countless times. What you claimed when you were a child is going to be different when you're a teenager, is different when you're in your 20s, when you're older, when you're married, when you have children, when you have a new job, when you move. It's always constantly changing, and you can identify yourself in different ways. And so even something that you used to be, you can let that go and grow into who you are now. It's like a constant growth and metamorphosis, I suppose, like in our lives. And so you can claim that for yourself, and then just embarking on that journey and having the courage to move forward through that is really powerful in that sense as well. And for this element, I think it matters so much because oftentimes when we do change, it's over an incredibly slow, long period of time. And it's not until we look back on our youth or certain periods in our life where we realize that we have changed. And so you can either embrace it and be proactive about the change and look back and say, hey, I don't really like this part of myself, or hey, I don't agree with this anymore, and taking the initiative to change. Or you can just change naturally based on your environment or nurture. Like I said, nature versus nurture, just moving and being exposed to new elements will help you change. But change doesn't have to be as like huge and drastic as we see it to be. Sometimes it can just be taking one small step towards the person that we're trying to be, or to grow in who we're trying to grow to become. And over time, that will definitely mold you into that person. I think it's just deciding and taking that first initiative. So it doesn't have to be as flamboyant or as drastic as you think, because that can be kind of fearful, jumping into change or jumping into a transition. And so I just want to tell you that if you are looking to change, whether that be your habit or your personality or your identity, just taking that initial step forward could really help you move forward. It's also really important to just evaluate yourself and be in tune with yourself, because as we grow and change, our dreams and aspirations could grow and change. When I was younger, I used to joke. Well, I wasn't joking at the time, but when I was younger, people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I would say, you know what, like, I want to work at Red Lobster. And to me, that was like the dream, because it was one of my favorite restaurants growing up, and it made me happy, and it was a place to go to celebrate my birthday or whatever it be in second grade. But now that I'm a little bit older, obviously my dream has changed and evolved. And so some people keep the same dream and stay on the same path, but as they grow and change, maybe you don't like that anymore. Maybe it doesn't align. And even though sometimes you can feel stuck in a situation, you always have that choice to pivot and to go into something that sparks joy for you or changes. And so definitely reevaluate that and be in tune with yourself and see if what you're doing is actually what you want to do. And it's okay to change into something else. You know, I think that's the purpose of our lives, to just grow and change until we find that perfect fit for us. Number 3 is to change your environment, but not yourself. And that may sound a little bit counterintuitive to point number 2, but going into your environment, just the people that you surround yourself with and the environment that you're in, just moving can instantly change your attitude and pieces of yourself, just because we are heavily influenced by our environment. So they say there's always that saying in that study of like, if you surround yourself with like 10 friends who are dumber, smarter, negative, whatever, you'll just eventually mold into that 10th person. And so the same thing kind of goes into your work environment or the city that you're in. I think the biggest cultural shift that I see when people reference like moving is like in the American culture, it's very fast paced, and we always talk about our jobs and how busy we are. But let's say like Spain, where there's siestas and like a little bit slower pace of the day, it's a completely different environment, and you kind of adjust to the slower elements of their days. And so something like that, whether you're moving from a busy city to a slower paced environment, can kind of influence your own decisions. And when I say like don't change yourself, sometimes that's why marketing works so well, is because they appease to us by adding things to our environment that make us feel like we have changed, whether that's getting the newest car and buying luxury items to portray ourselves in this light, to feel like our environment has actually changed. But it is supposed to make us feel that we've changed ourselves. But really, I think the biggest flaw or fallacy is that it actually doesn't change you that much when you purchase all of these frivolous items, unless it actually holds value to you. And so that's what I mean. Like sometimes change in environment has to be in line, but it only works when it's more in tune with who you are actually on the inside. So if you are a super family oriented person and you need to go into an environment where there's more families, where you can thrive in that way, then that's going to benefit you. But if you go somewhere else where it isolates you or something like that, then obviously it will hinder your happiness and your identity in that sense. So definitely keep that in mind, I guess, when you're going through that transition. Number 4 is to overcome limited thinking. I think there's a huge disconnect into who we think we are versus who we actually are, because sometimes we see ourselves in a different hue or a different light, whether that be incredibly positive or incredibly negative. And sometimes I think that those thoughts can be barriers, or they can be walls that inhibit us from pursuing something that we're actually good at or destined to do. It can be referred to as imposter syndrome, whether you want to branch out and try something new that comes with change. Maybe you want to aspire to be an artist and you picked up painting and you feel like you're not the best painter, so you're not qualified. It's all these thoughts that we think, but really when we just put our energy out into the world and just go for it and try this new painting career, we are far more capable of doing it than we could ever imagine. So I think just going headfirst into fear and moving above our own thoughts that limit us could really help us align more to who we are, because sometimes I think those obstacles is really what stops us from getting to that point. And I think that's also why it really matters to figure out who you are, because I feel like once you know who you are and what you want and what you're going for, then there's nothing that can convince you otherwise of going out to achieve it and going out to go grab it and reach for it and strive for it. It's when you have that self-doubt of like, am I qualified, or should I be doing that, where it really can kind of stop us. And I don't think we should let anything stop us from reaching our dreams or going towards something that we actually want to do. Also, I think there's much to be said. You have to be very careful on what you identify yourself with. I think that oftentimes we say, oh, we're bad at math or something like that. That's a common one, like, oh, I'm just bad at math. And you get that first initial thought when you're a kid, and you could have just had a bad math teacher who didn't teach you very well, and so you just really didn't get it. But you carry that stigma with you your entire life. So when you're an adult and you're just like, oh, I'm just bad at math, and you could have just been really good at math at the time, and you're actually really good with numbers, but you didn't give yourself the opportunity to see if you were actually bad at math. And so I think that small example can be applied to anything, whether that's I'm too shy, and so you don't want to give public speeches even though you're a great speaker and you're a great writer, but no, I'm too shy. Or, oh, I'm too awkward to go to social events or to go networking, and all these different things. You identify with these certain things that kind of inhibit us and allow you to kind of get away from what you're destined and what you're supposed to be doing out of fear, or out of the identity that you have chosen, even though it's self-inflicted. You put that on yourself, so definitely check in and be very careful with how you identify yourself, because you have to see where that stems from and whether that's something you just think or whether that's actually true and relevant to you. Like for me, I know I'm not a very fast runner, and that's just what it is, and no matter how hard I train, I won't be super fast, and that's something that I can identify with, so you have to figure out what that may be for you. And figuring out all of those elements can help you live a more authentic life, because everything and every action that you choose will be more in line to your purpose, your why, and who you are. And it just makes it so much easier once you know what that is and who that is inside of you. Lastly is number 5, and that's to constantly challenge your self-image. I feel like sometimes we appease others because we want to be perceived a certain way and to fit in a certain way and look a certain way to other people. I think that goes back to buying luxury or just keeping up with the Joneses to fit some sort of way. It could be simple as me dressing up for this video because I want to look presentable to you guys, but my normal self, I guess, would be fine as well. It's just that sort of connotation of how we want to look and be perceived through other people. And sometimes I think we need to be very careful about that and to challenge that and see if it actually holds any value to you. And are you doing it because you want to and it sparks joy for you, or are you constantly doing it for other people? And it can be bigger things, whether that's buying a really large house that you can't afford, or getting that upgraded job even though it doesn't make you happy, things like that. So I would just look into your self-image and check yourself and see if it actually aligns with who you are and what you actually want. I think that's so important, to take moments and show up for yourself and make sure that what you're doing is actually what you want, because sometimes I think we forget that, and it's really important not to, because it's your life at the end of the day and you should really, really enjoy it. But I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I think that honestly, just knowing yourself opens up all kinds of different new opportunities, because you'll know exactly what you want, and obstacles get a little bit smaller because you're not hitting a bump every way just to kind of gauge on the right thing or the wrong thing. You just know exactly what you want and where you're going and the path that you're on. I think there'll definitely be challenges, but it just makes it a little bit easier because they're worth fighting for. the adversity that you face. And so I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you got any value, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up on the bottom of this video and subscribe if you're new. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.